Good morning. We will go ahead and get started. It's 8 o'clock Mountain Time. Certainly a little different forum. While we miss being with all of you at WISPapalooza and doing this event in person, we certainly look forward to the opportunity to share some pretty exciting stuff with you today. So with us, myself, Derek Underwood, Vice President of North America. We've got Atul Bhatnagar, President and CEO of Cambium Networks, and Scott Imhoff, Senior Vice President of Product Line Management.
Morning.
So we're going to go through a slide deck today to share some pretty exciting new products, new innovation from Cambium. Atul's going to share quite a bit about the company direction and core values and vision for the company. And then we'll save time for Q&A at the end. So look forward to some good interaction engagement with all of you. Again, thank you very much for joining. And with that, I will turn it over to Atul.
Great. Thanks, Derek. Good morning to all of you. Greetings. We are all living in very unprecedented times. It's different challenges across the board, across the world, in all communities. But I would say first priority for all of us is to make sure health and family is strong and safe. And I wish all of you are taking care of that and doing well. Broadband internet has become a lifeline. I think if there's one thing which is coming out of this crisis, that is that broadband internet is a lifeline. And whether it's health, education, work, look at the way we are communicating this morning. It shows what's coming down the pike. The networks we support are going to be the foundation for societies increasingly. So I want to congratulate all of you. Olivia, next slide, please. I want to congratulate all of you for your contribution to your communities. You all have made phenomenal difference, and we see that. We are working with thousands and thousands of WISPs across the world in North America. Look at this chart. We just tried to plot few representative samples in the United States. For all your contributions. Because of you, the schools are functioning, clinics are functioning, people are working, small and medium businesses are working. So again, admirable job in this crisis. And your teams and you deserve a lot of kudos. And we also value your support, your advice, your guidance. Over the years, you have been a very key part of Cambium journey. So as we succeed, behind the success is actually your wind in our sail. So I want to thank all of you and express our deepest gratitude. Next slide, please. As we go across the world, your compatriots, WISP across the world, they are making phenomenal difference, fantastic difference. We see that in developing communities, developing countries, and interestingly, developing communities are everywhere. And everyone I've talked to hundreds of customers over the last 5-6 months. They've all expressed so much gratitude for the WISP community for keeping things connected, for keeping societies functioning, for keeping businesses going. You have stepped up the plate. You have provided performance. Traffic in many networks has gone up by 40, 50, 60%. Every subscriber is asking for more throughputs. You have stepped up. So again, congratulations to all of you and your team. Next slide, please. As we look forward, the goodness, I always say this, I think now we all done many jobs in our career. This job, all of us delivering performant broadband, performant internet, is actually bringing so much goodness to society. While every business has to make money, every business makes sure that they have the resources for the future. I think bringing goodness is one of the deepest satisfaction. Whether it's disaster recovery, whether it's California fires or Hurricane Laura, I see our products collectively, we are making such a difference in the community. And that gives me a lot of satisfaction. And that should give us, all of us as community, a lot of satisfaction. Next slide, please. So overall, one of our core values as a company is to give back to community. And I know our engineers, our employees, they take a lot of pride in assembling bikes or working with community. And every Thanksgiving time frame, we express that in the communities we live. Cambium Networks is in a lot of different locations, and we encourage our employees to actually participate and give back to community. So that's a very key core value, and that binds us together. Next slide, please. So overall, our strategy is very simple. No two networks are same. If you look at what you create in each community for each business, there are different networks. Someone is more focused on throughput because of Netflix or other media-rich applications. Someone is more focused on connecting lots of industrial devices. Someone is focused on video surveillance. We have different networks. So our goal is to create the solutions which you can use to customize and build purpose-built network. And networking is a sophisticated discipline, and wireless is even more sophisticated. And our job is to give you the flexibility. That's why we call our solutions Cambium Wireless Fabric. You can customize, you can decide. Our job is to keep doing innovation, keep bringing latest solutions. You solve the problems, we give you the tools. And we will continue to spend as a company, and this has been the case for the last 8 years behind our success. And it will continue to be the case. We will spend approximately 15% of our revenue in R&D. This way we can see the future, create the future, get your advice, adapt appropriately. And you saw our innovations around millimeter wave, 60 gigahertz products, absolutely breakthrough. You saw our announcements a few quarters back on Wi-Fi 6, the AX architecture. EPMP lineup of our very affordable point-to-multipoint continues to propel forward, continues to innovate phenomenally well. PMP 450, the backbone of Cambium, the backbone of industry in a lot of ways, the resilient architecture, the performant architecture continues to move forward with lots of innovation. Our leadership in CBRS, we believed in that. We bet on that. We innovated around that, and you can see the results. Very proud of what team has done, but many of you have worked with us, and it's a significant innovation when we do frequency control from the cloud. CN Ranger, our LTE lineup, that demonstrates Cambium will adopt standards wherever they are and weave them into our fabric, bring them as a solution, as a building block into our fabric. CN Heat, the tools, not just link planner, but LiDAR based, our CN Heat will keep propagating our tools so that you can focus on the work and not minutia, not details. And where you need details, we have the details through these tools. So as you can see, all of these are being woven into the fabric we call Cambium Wireless Fabric. Next slide, please. So overall, as we think about WISP industry, first of all, we are very proud of this industry. We're very proud to be participating in that. We have been committed to that. We are always going to innovate and make sure we support your initiatives. Since no two networks are same, since your differentiation is different, we will make sure we understand your initiatives and support you strongly. We always focus on investment protection. That is one of our core values. The way we did CN Medusa, we made sure that it is compatible with our subscriber modules. Every innovation we do, we work very hard to make sure your investment is protected. There are times when an innovation would be a leap forward. It'll be a step function. But as much as possible, Cambium will strive very hard to make sure your investment is protected, our solution moves forward seamlessly. Regulatory advocacy. We have been working very closely with FCC, and a CBRS is a great example of industry collaboration. We work closely with WISPA and many initiatives, and we admire that work because if we stay together, a lot of these initiatives benefit everyone and our customers as well. 24/7 support worldwide. That's a very key Cambium differentiation. Our engineers are there, and as much as possible, we will respond quickly. And when we don't, please give us feedback. There might be times when we may not, and I want to hear about that. We want to make sure we correct that situation. But our goal always is to make sure we are right there for you with our strong field technical resources. We are very proud of our heritage, the RF expertise, the way we understand the black magic of wireless. Wireless is a sophisticated field. It's real time. Everything happens in real time. And it's a dynamic field. It's adaptive. It changes. And that brings the challenges. That also brings the value. We make sure that our field resources are accessible to you as you run into any difficulty. Cambium is always there. And advanced access to technology. And many of you participate with us in alpha, beta, you give us feedback, and we make sure we deploy them in real world. It's very easy to write specifications in a lab, but the deployed products in real conditions, they perform differently. So our goal is to always make sure that our networks scale, they're resilient, they can handle different weather conditions, different rain, moisture, all sorts of things, and continue to advance the quality of the product. So your feedback, your support, your guidance has always been a backbone of Cambium. Next slide, please. WAN LAN convergence. I have done networks now for over 3 decades. Started with 1 megabit Ethernet, and that seemed at that time to be phenomenal. Then in 2005-6 timeframe, my team introduced 100 gigabit Ethernet. Now that was a wireline, speeds and feeds. Meanwhile, wireless, we all started with 1200 baud or long time back. We are now talking about gigabit networking wirelessly. For the first time, there is a convergence, especially when you look at the last 5 kilometers type of a distance, the edge of the network. The WAN speeds, wireless speed with millimeter wave are matching now the LAN speeds. That's a big deal. What that means is now the edge of the network will become more and more competent to handle processing. A lot more decision making on the networks will happen on the edge. The cloud decisions will happen on the edge because the connectivity, the glue of the future is wireless for that edge. Clearly, easier to deploy, lower cost of ownership. Clearly, that's where the world is going to go increasingly. And as a result, we do see the end user demand skyrocketing because everyone has realized that the home broadband or small and medium businesses broadband internet connectivity is lifeline. And they all want more performance because now not only you're doing work from home, you're also doing education from home. So in some ways, homes have become mini enterprise. You need security, you need performance, you need easy manageability. So with the onset of millimeter wave, I think the existing networks are getting augmented. No one technology will replace another completely. I think every technology will have a room and a place. That's why we say we are now augmenting, whether it's fiber, we are replacing in some places, but in many places we are augmenting. And wireless broadband now clearly end-to-end is multi-gigabit. Now, not all applications will need that, but increasingly everybody needs strong performance, reliable performance. And as this multi-gigabit fabric arrives, we will manage all of this from a single pane of glass. We have worked very hard last 6 years with our CN Maestro cloud-based management, single pane of glass, whether it's our 450 or EPMP or PTP products, or it is LTE or emerging 60 gigahertz, down the line 5G, single pane of glass in the cloud, very scalable, very advanced cloud architecture. And that gives us confidence that our customers can focus on their job while we provide them tools so they can do that purpose-built network. Next slide, please. One wireless fabric rising to the challenge. As multi-gigabit wireless arrives, as it is here now, I think the significant advancement is on coverage and capacity. And the future increasingly will bring applications which are very media rich, AR, VR. And in fact, what COVID is doing right now is it's teaching us that. It has accelerated all these tectonic shifts, I would say by probably 3 to 4 years. We would have gone here anyway, but I think it has accelerated things. And now that coverage and capacity with multi-gigabit abilities enables the new set of applications. It'll be very media rich, it'll be very interactive, and I think many technologies from the gaming world will come into the enterprise, into homes, for the way we do things very intuitively. And that's where this capacity and coverage will be used. So end-to-end multi-gigabit wireless, in my opinion, is a very key building block of the future. And it needs to be rapidly deployable, easily diagnosable. It should be scalable. It should be something which we treat as a utility, in the sense that once you deploy it, it's there. You can count on it. So a lot of our focus is on that easy to deploy, easy to manage, easy to diagnose, as much remotely, with as much statistics and tools so you can really manage it remotely. Reliable, secure, and scalable, that has been a foundation of every Cambium product. We test them very thoroughly in our labs, and we test them in our networks, real world networks, in different conditions, different weather, different countries, make sure they are always compliant, make sure they're safe, secure. So overall, as Cambium delivers this multi-gigabit wireless, we are hoping you work very closely with us, give us feedback. Our core values are always listen, be humble, and make sure we adapt, because future will bring challenges, but also lots of opportunities for all of us. And it is bringing already today. And the last thing I want to say is, and we say to every employee in our company, I think the health and family are the foundations. And with those foundations, we can all pursue our passion, whatever that passion is. So we are always there for you. Please give us feedback. As a company, our success would not be there without you. You have stood by us in tough times. And as Cambium really propels and accelerates, we want to be here for you. And please keep your feedback coming. And thanks for all the support. And please accept our gratitude and be safe in these challenging times. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass it to now, I think, Scott Imhoff.
So thank you very much for that, Atul. And it's a pleasure to be here with the audience, and looking forward to your questions at the conclusion of the presentation. Please take advantage of the chat window, but certainly we'll take live questions at the conclusion. Next slide, please. So just to keep your attention and share a little bit of our new product portfolio that we're going to talk about today, we do have some door prizes. The key is you must be present to win. The first prize that we're going to give away is the new, if you will, retro PMP 450B. The second is an omnidirectional MicroPop. And last is a surprise. So I think the surprise is well worth waiting around for. And I think you'll be pleased, and certainly the winner will be pleased to receive it. Next slide. I want to start off with thanking many of you for responding to our 4th annual Global WISP survey. The 4th year in a row that we've conducted the survey. We continue to get tremendous response from WISP around the world. We do take the input from this survey into our product development and roadmap and business initiatives. So it's very helpful for us to understand the health and the trajectory and the areas of importance within the WISP industry. A couple of points that I did want to highlight, and we'll be publishing the report in a greater detail and sharing more of the information transparently with the WISP industry, is the optimism within the WISP community. And it was interesting for us to see that in the depth of the COVID crisis, when we conducted the survey, optimism within the WISP community was at an all-time high. And I think that that's a reflection of the WISP community recognizing the importance and impact that they were having on the work, study, and play from home phenomena that many of us are still experiencing today. So congratulations to you and to your staff and to your businesses in reacting and supporting the communities around the world. Well done. I think the other interesting tidbit is the constraints to growth. We consistently see access to spectrum highlighted and finance. On the spectrum front, those in the US are seeing a bit of a renaissance. CBRS is now live, and we'll touch on that in just a moment in greater detail. So 150 megahertz of spectrum, incremental 100 megahertz. Just recently, 2 weeks ago, the FCC voted on opening up 4.9, certainly not without its own challenges and work to go through, but prospectively 50 megahertz of spectrum there. Much earlier in the year, the 1.2 gigahertz of spectrum for 6 gig on the horizon. The mid-band is starting to open up. So from a WISP standpoint, particularly in the US, the future is bright with regards to spectrum access, and I think that'll support our continued growth. We're also pleased to see the continued adoption of managed services within the WISP community, extending their networks from not just providing broadband to the address, whether it's enterprise or residential, but expanding their services within the address, providing managed Wi-Fi access solutions, which of course we support through CM Maestro and our Wi-Fi 6 portfolio and moving forward. So I think a lot of good things are taking place. I think the last bullet point is notable for all of us, that 56% of new customers are from references. And that's a combination of, does the service work? If it doesn't, then you're not going to get a recommendation. What's the customer service like? I think Amazon is a testament to the power of the reference, good or bad. And I think we should all keep that in the back of our minds to support the continued growth of the industry. Again, just some highlights from the survey. A thank you for those of you that participated, and we'll be sharing more details on the survey results in the weeks to come. Next slide, please. We do want to conduct a quick poll, one question, and there'll be a second poll later in the presentation related to getting our understanding of this space. So if you could just take a moment and respond to this. What we'd like to understand is what do you expect to be the most common service level plan you offer in 2021 in terms of adoption? So when you look at your subscriber base, what is the most common service plan that is subscribed to? Just take a moment and respond to that. That'd be fantastic. Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's check out the results here. Okay. So it's interesting that the FCC defines broadband, as you know, 25 down, 3 up. But the poll indicates that 25 to 50 and 50 to 100, about even statistically. So well above the pure definition of broadband. Excellent, excellent. All right. Next slide, Olivia. Go ahead and the next one. So Atul mentioned CBRS, and it took a long time coming. But the time is now, and literally the time is now. Tomorrow is a critical transition date for those of you that had Part 90 licenses that are expiring on October 17th. I suspect that we'll have some folks that don't quite make that transition on the 17th. But so you know, and just to reinforce, the installed base of PNP 450 at 3 gig is fully Part 96 compliant. It has been since July of 2019. It does require a firmware update and then subscription to SaaS services, but you're in great shape with Cambium pulling your investment forward to take advantage of the full 150 megahertz of spectrum with that installed base. We support 3 SaaS providers, Federated, Google, and CommScope. You as the network operator make the decision on which of those 3 you prefer, and we can implement service on CBRS quite quickly. Just to give you a sense of adoption, which has been fantastic and growing rapidly, we now have over 50,000 devices under management on our CBRS SaaS services, and I expect that to continue at a torrid pace here through the end of the year. I will also say, as with any plan and any solution, once the plan faces the enemy, you need to modify the plan. And we're certainly learning a lot about our solution, both from the infrastructure standpoint, as well as the SaaS standpoint, the sensor networks, and we're continually improving that service, learning from some of the challenges that we've experienced collectively, and injecting that experience into enhancing the service, and I expect it to continue to improve over time. So patience there, appreciate it, and the service continues to improve. Next slide, please. The hallmark of our CBRS solution is the PNP 450M. This, you may have familiarity with the 5 gigahertz, which is 14 by 14. The 3 gigahertz is an 8 by 8 platform, and as I've mentioned in the past, there's 2 reasons for that. One is physics, and the geometry of the solution. As you go lower in the band, we felt that the 14 by 14 would just physically be too large for most implementations. The second, and perhaps some foreshadowing, 8 by 8 aligns quite nicely to LTE-A and the ability to leverage this radio as a remote radio head at 3 gig. But tremendous performance. We've seen tremendous demand, and I've communicated directly with the WISP community. We recognize that some of our supply challenges meeting that demand. We are catching up, and I think you'll find yourself whole here shortly in Q4. But appreciate the response. It was a bit greater than we expected, but we're on track to get you the equipment that you require to conduct your service. Next slide, please. Complementing the 450M is the 450B high gain subscriber radio. This is the center of the solution. Been out for quite some time, hearing great comments on the performance. We are taking input and would appreciate input from you on the benefit and need for a mid-gain 3 gig solution, as well as prospectively 3 gig on the 450B retro, which we're going to see here in just a moment. So if you're using this device but see a need, a benefit for mid-gain or a retro platform, please feed that back to Cambium. We're making some decisions on those investments now. Next slide. An important, I guess, positive attribute of 3 gigahertz and CBRS and the increased power is the ability to support near and non-line of sight. And this chart really illustrates the importance of the ability to model that. One of the significant enhancements in C and Heat was the development of a proprietary algorithm to predict our ability to support near and non-line of sight at an address. So a lot of work went into the development of that algorithm, the testing of that algorithm, and flushing it out. On the left-hand side, you could see a pure line of sight assessment of a particular address, and the conclusion would be can't serve that address, and you would forego that revenue opportunity. Using C and Heat with the LiDAR data and near and non-line of sight accuracy, you would conclude that in fact you can serve that address, and you have the opportunity to adopt that revenue stream. So take a look at C and Heat, and if not C and Heat, other tools to predict coverage, particularly in near and non-line of sight. And with the higher power at CBRS and the capabilities of the 450M at 3 gig, I think you'll be pleased with your ability to provide coverage. Next slide. Next slide. So looking at some of the other products within the portfolio, some significant investments on the 450 platform in particular. We've now introduced the 450 MicroPop in both Omni and Sector configurations. This particular development probably had the longest gestation in terms of beta testing of any product we've ever introduced. So we started down this path over 2 years ago with some hand-built devices that we put into the field. And on a very positive note, we still can't get those devices back. The operators that are utilizing them were quite pleased with the performance and the flexibility that they provided. But we learned from those beta tests, alpha tests actually, and beta subsequent to that, on improvements that were necessary to enhance performance further, particularly around the antenna design to make sure we were providing the coverage that was optimal. Next slide. And we are seeing the results of that effort in the beta results and then the early adopters. So if you could think of MicroPops in a continuum. You can use these devices where you have high density deployments and you need to de-densify. You need to shrink the cells to make better use of the available spectrum and serve those customers. On the other end of the spectrum, no pun intended, on the other end of the densification question is very light deployments where you simply don't have the population density or prospective customer density to justify a full-on AP. And we're finding both examples, and these illustrations support that. But if you haven't contemplated a MicroPop installation, you haven't looked at your coverage footprint and determined where you have the opportunity to de-densify or perhaps serve low density regions economically with the 450 platform, the MicroPop gives you the opportunity to do that. Next slide, please. So the retro, the introduction of this platform is driven by the audience on this call. The use of the reflector dish, the installed base, the ability to very quickly exchange that 450 that's using that reflector dish with a platform that provides better performance, higher packet processing, etc. What was there. The audience on this call asked for it, pushed for it, demanded it, and we've addressed that with the 450B Retro. This product is now shipping and in market and does provide that lift in performance in packet processing. It provides wideband 4.9 to 5.925 and fits into the vast majority of reflector dishes that are deployed today. Next slide. Not yet in market, but on the immediate horizon is the 450B Connectorized. And you'll see this in two configurations, one as a subscriber module, which will allow you to apply secondary antenna subsystems to meet unique installation requirements, extend range further, what have you. The second implementation is a MicroPop. So you saw the Omni, you saw the Sector. If you needed a more flexible solution in terms of antenna subsystem, we will have a MicroPop implementation of the Connectorized radio. Both of these solutions will commence commercial shipments very early in Q1. Next slide. In addition to enhancing the hardware on the 450B, and you just saw the introduction of the MicroPop, the Retro, and the Connectorize, which provides a very nice portfolio of devices to support your network, we continue to enhance and invest in our software. Release 16.2 is the current release available on the website. Release 20 is on the immediate horizon. Beta is available. It is underway right now, and there's some significant improvements in that. I would particularly point out lifts in packet processing, where we expect to exceed over 100,000 BPS. And I think the more powerful feature, which I'm going to speak at in the next two slides, is intermediate modulation modes, which will lift aggregate sector capacity and provide higher data rates to subscribers. Going back to the poll results earlier in this presentation, I think there's a direct correlation to the service plans that you're offering and the introduction of this PPS lift and the intermediate modulation modes, which is great to see and what we expected to see. In Q2 of 21, we expect to introduce release 20.x. We'll see what our numbering scheme lands when we get there. But again, some significant enhancements to the firmware code to better leverage your investment. Next slide, please. Now, let's talk about intermediate modulation modes. It was interesting. I made a few phone calls and have a few more to make to gather some input and feedback. And one of the individuals that I spoke with specifically asked about intermediate modulation modes, which teed up these next two slides quite nicely. But in the top left of the chart, you can see a 6-mile range assessment and the comparison between the existing aggregate and then with intermediate modulation modes. It lifts it by 10.6, which is a 13% difference, which is nothing to sneeze at. 10% improvement is not bad at all. Next slide, Olivia. Now, as you move range out and in today's deployments, you see modulation rates drop. This is where you really see a significant improvement. You see it up almost 31% using intermediate modulation modes. So using your existing equipment with a firmware update at no cost from Cambium, you can lift your performance of your network anywhere from 8% to 30% with a firmware update. I think Aaron and his team on the development side just really did a phenomenal job with this particular feature enhancement. Next slide. Moving forward to EPMP, I'd like to refresh everybody's understanding of why EPMP. We have 2 point-to-multipoint architects in our network, obviously 450, which we just went through, and EPMP. And there's some tremendous advantages to EPMP, starting with MU-MIMO. The ability to support 4x4 MU-MIMO with the EPMP 3000 provides a very cost-effective solution to provide very effective data rates to network operators. And it offers stability. It offers the ability to densely populate those sectors well over the average of 25 from competing solutions. We support the stay frequencies that many of you have applied for and exercising today. We offer the uplink and downlink beam steering, dynamic filtering, the synchronization, And we've been able to carry forward our 802.11 devices, and you'll see later in the presentation where we're going to be going in the future. Next slide. So at the last WISPapalooza event, remember the good old days of 1,000 people in a conference room in Vegas, and I sure missed that, and looking forward to getting back to it in 2021. We talked about the dual horn and it coming into market. It's now been in market for quite some time, and we're seeing experimentation, we're seeing adoption, we're seeing commercial deployment where the noise floors are particularly high, and there's an explicit advantage of narrowing that beam on that sector and more densifying that tower location. So if you haven't experimented with that dual horn, which is unique in the industry for supporting mu-MIMO, do so. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the performance. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the opportunities to enhance your coverage and the capacity of the network itself. And it's a nice complement to a full sector solution. Next slide. Now, when you look at the EPMP 3000 APs, we now have three options in market. We have the MicroPop, similar in concept and objective as the 450B MicroPop. So either densifying high density locations or going into low density locations where the investment in a full sector simply doesn't make sense. We have the EPMP 3000L, it's kind of an interim step. And then we have the full EPMP 3000 platform. And we complement both of those with a wide range of sector antenna solutions from Cambium and ecosystem partners in the industry. So tremendous flexibility in designing your network to meet the specific needs of that particular geographic coverage. Next slide. So a little peek on the horizon. Gigabit EPMP point-to-point. This is built on an 802.11ax SoC and marks the next generation of the EPMP platform. We expect to be able to support over 500 megabits per second on this platform, initially in a point-to-point configuration, but as we did with the EPMP Force 300-25, downstream, you'll see us introduce complementary access points and start to build that subscriber module on the 802.11ax SoC, and you'll see tremendous performance gains on that platform. And as you would expect from Cambium, you'll be able to pull forward your EPMP subscriber base on that new architecture. But learn more about this platform on Wireless Wednesday. On November 11th, we'll dive deep into the EPMP Force 400 and tell you a bit more about what we're doing there. Next slide. So let's transition and talk a bit about what's at the edge. So many years ago, perhaps too long ago, we entered this space with the R200 series. We've now effectively upgraded that portfolio with the R195, both with and without PoE out. And we've made some substantial improvements in performance, both in coverage and in speed. So 30% improvement in coverage, 20% faster than the R201 series. If you are looking for an edge solution for your home gateways, the R195 may be an ideal solution for you. I encourage you to take a look at that. Next slide. But we're not done with our home footprint. We see tremendous opportunity in extending these networks from core to edge and enhancing the management through CN Maestro. Certainly, meshing capability within the home is becoming more and more important, particularly with the work, study, and play at home and the need for comprehensive indoor coverage. So Darren and the development team are working quite diligently at defining a Cambium quality indoor meshing solution, fully integrated with our transport solutions, 450 and EPMP, and fully integrated with CN Maestro for effective cloud coverage. I know many of you have experimented with different solutions, and maybe not even experimented, you're deploying different solutions. We'd love to hear from you on what you would define as an ideal indoor home gateway and meshing solution. Share your experiences with us, share with us what's worked, what hasn't worked, and where you see gaps. We're currently in the definition and development phase, and it's ideal time to share with us what you have in mind. Next slide, please. We've also this year introduced our first enterprise class Wi-Fi 6 access points. These are software-defined radios. The XV3-8, a 3-radio solution, ideal for high-density deployments. You think about schools, large public venues, where you have a high density of users, perhaps over an extended period of time or even transitory. It's complemented with the XV2-2, which is, I'll say, the more typical and volumetric radio. But the combination of the XV3-8 and the XV2 really allow you to define and deploy very effective indoor Wi-Fi 6 networks. Use them in combination, again, managed with CN Maestro, supported by our MSP capabilities. So if you're looking, or maybe you're operating today in MSP, or looking to move into that direction and provide enterprise class services to small and medium businesses, the Wi-Fi 6 access points from Cambium will be an ideal solution for you. Next slide. We complement our Wi-Fi access points with an edge switch. And we spoke about this at the last WISPapalooza open house, the wireless aware switching. Tremendous portfolio now on that platform, from 16 port, 8 port, all the way up to 48 port with and without PoE. Tremendous flexibility, a rich enterprise suite of functionality that's been enhanced over time, fully integrated to CN Maestro to allow you end-to-end control of that Wi-Fi access and switching network. Next slide. So I think many of you have been waiting for this platform, and we are really happy to be talking about the CN Matrix TX series. This is a purpose-built switch for the WISP industry. We have observed what's in the market. We have studied it closely. We have looked at where demands are going in the future within the WISP industry in terms of PoE out and what access points are requiring to be in terms of power consumption. We've looked at redundancy and being able to provide dual power supplies, switchable power supplies, AC and DC requirements. And I think John and team have really defined a tremendous product for the WISP industry based on your input and your needs. Tremendous amount of market research went into this platform. We're really excited to get it into market. The beta tests are underway, and you see some of the attributes of this platform. As I mentioned, dual redundant AC or DC power supplies, fully integrated sync, and the opportunity to use external sync as well for redundancy purposes, the complete enterprise suite of services. So if you're using the enterprise switches, same feature set, same set of capabilities between the enterprise switch and the tower switch. You can manage it on-prem with CN Maestro or via cloud, and we'll be introducing these in volume in Q1, very early Q1, and you can learn more about it on Wireless Wednesday on December 9th. So take a look at this. We're excited for it, and it really provides a complete Cambium solution. Next slide, please. So this is our next poll, and what we're interested in understanding is the impact that COVID had on your service packages, or in what you expect to have. So this is a complement to the earlier poll. If you could take a few minutes to respond to it, I would appreciate it. While we're waiting for the poll to conclude, if you finished your response, take a few minutes to pop in some questions into the chat window, and we'll look to get through those at the end of the presentation, which is just on the horizon. All right, yeah. Well, you definitely validated our hypothesis, but I'm a bit surprised as significant as it is. So 93% of you saw an increase in the service packages that you were offering, which is obviously probably driving your backhaul demands, your point of presence demands as well. So that's good. That's what we expected. It's a bit greater than I expected it to be. All right, next slide, please, Olivia. So that brings us to the CN Wave. And there's been certainly a lot of discussion, a lot of webinars, a lot of activity with Facebook and others on the horizon of 60 gig gigabit networking to the edge. And we announced this product on September 16th. We expect commercial shipments to commence mid-November. We have a global network of beta testers well underway, fine-tuning the product up until we ship the hardware out in mid-November. Just as a refresh, it is an 802.11ay based platform, and there's distinct advantages over the AD based products that are in market today, particularly on the number of nodes per sector. The capacity of this solution is significant, up to 15 gigabits in the V5000 distribution node, and I'll touch on that in just a moment. The architecture is very flexible and dynamic. The devices can support point-to-point, point-to-multipoint, or meshing, and again, delivering gigabit to the edge, reinforcing that previous poll where we expect to see an ever increase in demand and capacity at the edge. Next slide, please. I wanted to touch a little bit more on the V5000. So this distribution node, the equivalent to the access point, be it the EPMP 3000 or the 450M, is unique as far as we can tell with the early deployments of 802.11ay based systems, as it's a dual sector solution and it supports 280 degrees in a fully integrated package. So what you're looking at there in the picture is the complete solution with the integrated antenna subsystem. Dual sector, 280 degrees of coverage, up to 15 gigabits of capacity on that platform, and the ability to support up to 30 client nodes. Very high capacity capable distribution node. Next slide. In terms of use cases or applications, we have recognized in our early engagements in the market 7 pretty distinct use cases. And those 7 use cases bridge typical residential access in both rural and urban environments, but it also touches on industrial campus area networking and the ability to support both indoor and outdoor networking with Wi-Fi access backhaul, CCTV camera backhaul, and providing either the primary or diverse core networks, particularly in the MNO space for small cell backhaul and providing transport for metro cells. So 7 distinct use cases, bridging rural and urban geographies, low density to high density, all being addressed with those same 3 devices, the V5000, the V3000 optimized for point-to-point, and the V1000 client node. Next slide. What I can't emphasize enough about 60 gigahertz is the importance of engineering the network. 60 gig with its narrow beam width, its reliance on line of sight, the need to contemplate atmospheric conditions. You can design a network to support 4 nines and 5 nines of availability and provide that gigabit to the edge. But in order to do that, you need to engineer the network. We are providing tremendous tools to do that. Advanced Network Planner, taking advantage of LiDAR data to get great visibility on the topography, to assure line of sight, to understand network placement of the V5000 distribution node. You can scenario plan movement of that V5000 and how that affects coverage, the complements of the V3000 versus V1000. Keep in mind the V3000 is a 61 dBm device, so very high gain. Between those two, you can design that network to meet the needs, but it has to be designed, and I really can't emphasize that enough. Link Planner, Advanced Network Planner are the tools to do that. You'll have access to them as you have in the past with Link Planner, now complemented with that Advanced Network Planner. Next slide, please. So kind of a closing note to learn more about what I've highlighted here today in a really brief presentation. We have a very comprehensive set of webinars scheduled to touch on all of the products and solutions that I've highlighted here today. I encourage you to take advantage of them either real time or they're all recorded and posted for viewing at your convenience. Next slide. So let's get to the drawing. Derek, over to you. You get to have the fun part.
Thanks, Scott. Very well done. Very well done. Appreciate all the good insights. And we are excited to see what else. We've got some good questions for you as well. So we'll go ahead and start with the raffle. I think we've got, go ahead and start with that, and then we'll get to the questions. So the first winner is from Mountain West, Jim Moberly, Colorado. Good for the local guys here. The second winner is Melvin Wiggins of MTEcom. And the third winner is Roland Hewen.
Can you repeat who was the second winner?
Melvin Wiggins of MTEcom.
Great.
And the third winner of the surprise raffle is Roland Hewen of Four-Way Networks.
All right. Excellent.
So looks like all of those folks are on the call still. So I think the pot's right, Scott. And we look forward to getting that product out. Certainly look forward to the WISP switch, which is going to be a game changer for a lot of our service providers. So let's move on to some questions. We still have a few minutes here. And I've got the first question, Scott, is for you. Any plans for a 26 to 30 or to 28 gig PMP product?
So the question, just to repeat, is do we have plans for a 28 gig solution? And the answer is yes. We do have an active development program underway. A bit too early to share details on that program, but I would point out, and this is particularly important for the US market, the solution will actually support 24.25 to 29.5, and we're building it in alignment with 3GPP's 5G standard for air interface. And you'll hear more about that as we progress into 2021, but just a little too early on the details around that platform.
Thanks, Scott. We'll look forward to some details as they become available. So another question for you, Scott. Cambium is thinking conserve two platforms. Sorry, that looks like a little bit of a typo here, but the convergence of two platforms between CN Maestro and XMS Cloud. When should one customer use one over the other? Is the question of XMS Cloud versus.
Yes, so maybe just some backstory there for those that in the audience that aren't familiar with the second one, XMS. So in 2019, Cambium Networks purchased Xeris from Riverbed. There's some press, and you guys can all go read that. And that brought into Cambium a significant capability in dense Wi-Fi deployments. Xeris had an expertise in multi-radio APs and high-density deployments, strong presence in education, in particular here in the U.S. And XMS was effectively the OS, the equivalent to CN Maestro on that platform. We've continued to support both. We've continued to enhance both of those options. And we have published a convergence of those two platforms as we move forward, bringing the best and leaving the rest, if you will, to really optimize our network management and controller functionality. To answer the question is probably a more expansive discussion than this time will allow us for. But XMS really offers a deeper management plane with like application control, for example, onboarding, guest onboarding services, and the ability to control those multi-radio APs that came to us via Xeris. So I'd encourage the individual that asked the question to work with their Cambium representative and really assess the end user's environment and what the end user is looking to accomplish to make the decision on is that a CN Maestro deployment or is that an XMS deployment? Which I think good from a Cambium standpoint, and it just reflects our technology agnostic approach, is we have both solutions. And we'll recommend the right solution for that particular use case.
Agree. Thanks, Scott. One other question that I'll take. Will we have Cambium folks at WISPapalooza next week? We will. We have Dave Island, our Director of Service Provider. John Seaman, who's our RSM for the Western region, will be at WISPapalooza, and we will be at the Paris Hotel for the events in booth 104. So look forward to seeing as many of you who are planning on attending. Definitely stop by the booth and talk to both of those individuals. Scott, another question for you. Is there a plan to introduce a lower cost 3 gigahertz CPE?
So that goes part and parcel to my question during the presentation itself. We are kind of in the throes of evaluating the answer to that very question right now. So in the 5 gig space, we have the mid-band radio. Now we have retro, so there's 2 options. So you have three really nice options, particularly for residential access. We also have the 450i subscriber module for industrial applications. And we've seen very strong demand for 3 gig. The response to CBRS has been exceptional. And we're trying to make some decisions on, is it a 3 gig retro? Is it a 3 gig mid-band? Is it something different than that? So I'm glad the question came. And I, again, encourage you to reach out to your Cambium representative, and perhaps we can coordinate a direct dialogue on what your requirements are and what your needs are beyond simply the price. And maybe that's just it. Maybe it's strictly a pricing discussion.
Thanks, Scott. I think there are a few more questions that we're going to have that we won't have time to answer. We'll get back to those individuals and answer them, but we still have time for a couple more. Can you talk about our 6 gigahertz plan? I'm presuming the multi-point aspect around that.
Yeah. So let me just say this unequivocally: we will have a 6 gig platform. Perhaps we'll have 2 6 gig platforms. But we are studying closely and paying close attention to the schedule around 6 gig. And I think it's important, first of all, to thank WISPA. WISPA, as your advocate, did a great deal to advance access to the 6 gig, and not only for indoor applications, but for outdoor. And importantly, input on the power that was going to be viable, and how we're going to share that spectrum with the licensed microwave holders that are there today and will persist. So thank WISPA for their efforts in that area. Having said that, it's one thing for the FCC to say 6 gigahertz is going to be available, here's 1.2 gigahertz, and it's another thing for them to actually finalize the rules to utilize that 6 gig spectrum. And right now they're in the rulemaking process. We expect that to extend well into 2021. I would not anticipate 6 gig products in market, frankly, until the 2022 timeframe. I think it's going to take a while for the FCC to work through the rulemaking process, set up the spectrum sharing process, et cetera. But Cambium is fully committed to 6 gig, and you'll see us introduce product at pace as it becomes usable within the market. Atul, I don't know if you wanted to say a few words as well on our commitment to 6 gig.
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. Spectrum is the most precious resource. So first of all, I also want to thank WISPA. They work closely with many of us, and tremendous achievement. Cambium will create all tools for you, all platforms, all managed from a central location. So I think I'm very excited about that platform. So we have this amazing lineup coming in 2021, and 6 gigahertz is very much part of that.
Thank you, Atul. All right, Scott, I think we are 1 minute over, and I think there are still a few more questions, but Ellen, we can get back to the group around these questions and make sure we've got some are fairly technical, so we can address those with our field sales and field engineering. Well, I also don't, I want us to start on time and end on time, Scott. So, but so appreciate everybody joining. Good questions, good participation. Excellent job, Atul and Scott. Thank you guys so much for all the insights. and appreciate everybody joining, and look forward to seeing you at WISPapalooza next week.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you all for joining. Appreciate it. And congratulations to the winners.